I'm nervous.
Don't do like that the whole time.
Yeah, you have to talk right into it.
So happy to be here.
Every time you answer a question, I'm really, really happy to be here.
Tango 1 at the top, we are at Palma Vehicle. 10-4, Tango 1, you have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action, find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple. You're ruining the Tango 1 podcast. Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
Welcome to the Tango 1 podcast, episode 7. I am Dani Smith, retired cop and tactical team leader. I'm currently the founder and the owner, co-owner and co-founder, I guess, because the other one is here today, of the Garage Gym and owner of Tango 1 Solutions. I'm joined by my co-host, my friend, fireman and amateur stuntman, Casey Wright. And our mission every week, every episode, is to challenge you and guide you to create an immediate action plan against your problems and your weaknesses. Simply put, we just want you to do more and be more. Today, our guest is my wife, the Mrs. Smith, the co-owner and the co-founder of the Garage Gym. She's a mother of 2 young boys, the wife of a passionate, hardworking entrepreneur, as I like to put it. She was a police officer for 13 years. She worked in patrol in the drug unit. She was also Canada's first Jim Jones instructor and one of the first Jim Jones instructors in the whole world, females. And she is the COO, so the Chief Operating Officer of the Garage Gym. She's Boss. That's her program that she runs here, which focuses on lower body and core movements and strength for women in particular. And on that note, she is an advocate for the benefits of strength training for women and a positive body image. She's also reins in on me every day to make sure that all the millions of ideas I have get filtered down to our staff and keeps everybody on this team running smoothly. And she's the head of our fuel program, which has been a real big bolster, especially over the last 3 weeks during the COVID, or 8 weeks during the COVID. As a precision nutrition coach, she's also, over the last year and a half, her programs through the 6WTs and our challenges and our transformation challenges as a gym. Just statistics alone, not just the other people in the gym, just on those challenges alone, she's led the charge for this gym to drop over 2,000 pounds in weight and all kinds of inches. So today, you ready to roll?
The real boss is here today.
Yeah, the real
the
boss.
Actual owner of this place.
That's right.
So this episode, we're going to talk about how Dani went from being a police officer to a mother to an entrepreneur. Making the change and taking control of her life, and the importance of taking nutrition seriously. And we're also, of course, going to speak to how she's become an ambassador for strong and confident women, and what that means to her, and what that means to actually this gym, because that is one of our huge focuses here. So let's get rolling. So let's talk about this right away. So you're a 21-year-old female police officer. You enter, as a young, I remember when you got there, of course. I noticed you right away. But you were a young, blonde, female police officer in a completely male-dominated field. What was that like? Like, just talk about any kind of obstacles that you might have faced.
Yeah, I feel like I handed my resume in to you when you were working the front desk. I don't know.
Put it on the top of the pile.
Yeah,
so
I'm
maybe
sure
you did
the front
notice.
desk, she came in and handed me her resume. We're not positive on that. I might have just come around the corner when she was doing it, but yeah, I was there the day that she applied for this police service, which is pretty cool. So yeah, let's get into that then. So how was it? What was it like starting off as a young, let's focus a little bit on female. We've only had males so far on this show. You're the first female. So let's focus on some of those things that maybe Casey and I don't realize.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like being a female in any type of job is not the easiest thing to do. And in policing, especially because you're always underestimated. And also, another thing that kind of comes to mind is when you are working with a partner, I feel like if there's a lot of men on your shift, the men, you automatically would feel like they maybe don't want to be your partner because you're a female. You might be perceived as not being as strong as them, not being able to hold your own in a very serious situation. So that would be probably my top obstacle that I felt while I was on the job. But I think that as you go along in your career, in policing, for instance, once you kind of establish yourself and show that you might not be as strong as the next guy, but you might bring some really important qualities to that partnership as well, in a different way. So I think that just like any other job, you may have some obstacles to begin with, but once you kind of prove your worth and prove kind of what you bring to the table, then that tends to go away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. And one thing I noticed as being a male police officer was one that is true. Like I was, me for sure. I was reluctant when I came back from working 10 years in SWAT with just men, and one of my first shifts was in a cruiser with Candace, who's one of our coaches now. And I was like, man, I haven't worked with a female in like 11, 12 years, what it would have been. And I was with a guy partner for 2 years running into that. So, and then Candace obviously brings a ton to it. That first night we got into there was a shooting. She tackled somebody, tasered him. So I was like, she opened my eyes real quick at what a lot of these female officers, especially young ones, that never had the opportunity to work with you when you were young, but that's clear. So one of the things though that you've always talked about with the policing was that as what female officers bring to the table. One thing that always amazed me was that I noticed that when two female officers work together, you got shit done, but there was way less fights. And I'm talking like use of force, I guess. So what do you think that female officers were bringing to the table when you walk into the same call as me? And I don't know if it was me or if it's the perception of the bad guy looking at me that brings that fight. What do you think it is?
Have you ever heard of ego?
Casey, what?
Yeah, not at all.
That's for sure 100% that happens all the time. And it's because as soon as a man, for instance, in any situation is fired up and he's seeing red already and sees another man, it's an automatic thing. I think it's nature. And sees you coming in, probably flexing. There's going to be a chance where he's going to think, I'm going to be the alpha in this situation. I'm not going to be told what to do, especially if the police are in there. However, I've worked with both men and women on the job, and I definitely think that walking into a room with a female officer brings that way down. It brings the angry, red, escalated person down to like almost shock. Like, wait a minute, this isn't what I was expecting, especially with police. If they know the police have been called, or if they don't, I guess, too. So, yes, I think it has to do with the alpha dominance kind of situation. And then I do also feel like females on the job are more apt to start a conversation first, because we know that I don't want to fight that guy. Like, I don't want to get into a fight, especially if I'm with another female officer. So what am I going to do to de-escalate it? We're all taught to kind of talk about our feelings first before we decide to use any kind of force. So that's another thing. Maybe women just automatically resort to calming it down, and that is felt with their presence, I guess.
Definitely. I think that's good. Like, it brings in the more need for problem solving in certain situations, right? Instead of, let's go punch him in the face. And like you said, being in a situation like that, if you're a fired up individual who does have an ego like we talked about, if two big guys walk in the room, you instantly size them up and it's go time.
Yeah, they flex.
Right? As opposed to, it might be the opposite. Two females walk in, not saying that they can't beat the shit out of anyone, but that might bring you down into like morally like, okay, I'm going to calm down. And then now you guys can also prioritize like de-escalating the situation another way.
Yeah, because I would say most men are not going to hit a female, let alone a female officer. But there's way more of a chance of them maybe upping the tension in the room if there's a male officer and he knows that it could be go time at any moment. I think they just don't expect that from a female police officer immediately anyways.
And now some of these things you talked about, we've seen it in the gym too. We've seen where there's wait, Jared. I hope Jared Almonte listens to this. Where Jared Almonte says I'm like, hey, my wife's training you today. Jared's a big guy, real strong, great fit, and just a great person all around. But he was like, oh, okay. And then, you lay down and do push-ups next to him, and, he's like, oh, wow. Right? And we do see that, and we've seen that with Steph and with Nikki, where a bigger dude will come in here, and he's just, even though you guys are so well-trained, and I say it all the time, I feel like you and Candace are the, top, me, Casey, when it comes to knowledge of movements and knowledge of all these things, and just all-around knowledge of fitness and health, and they don't want to listen. How frustrating is that? And what's the tactic that you might use to switch them around, other than just doing a push-up competition against them, what you did with Jared?
Do you mean in the gym, or do you mean on the policing?
I mean, I think whatever you do here in the gym or in the policing is something that any female listening to us right now could probably take into account when they, whether it's a nurse going to tell another, specialist something that she thinks, and he's not listening to her, maybe because of bias, maybe because she is a female.
Yeah, no, I think confidence plays a huge part, and that's something that I really try to instill in the members of our gym, our children. I think that confidence can go a long way, whether you know your shit or not. If you act like you do, then most of the time people will listen. And so I think whether it's policing or whether it's in the gym or just in a daily life situation, or like a nurse speaking to a superior, just having that confidence to express yourself and to make sure that you put it out there. So whether you're in the gym and you are, especially if you are confident with your skills, if you're confident with what you're saying and demonstrating something or giving some examples of real life scenarios, I think in all of those cases, being confident and really educating yourself and knowing what you're talking about is the most important part.
Now, what are things you do personally to increase confidence? I know you well in the way of you do just demonstrate confidence. You can see it. They say you can see confidence when someone walks in the room before they say or do anything, right? The way they carry themselves, the way they're positioned, body posture, everything. So people there's a lot of times where there's somebody who is extremely intelligent, knows everything there is to know, and knows how to do it, but their body language says otherwise, or they're not sure how to project that. And those are the situations where people underestimate them. And if they never get the chance to demonstrate it, they never show it. So what are things people, or giving someone advice, what are things people can do to kind of boost the confidence and kind of bring up the fact that hey, I actually know all this stuff, and why am I being so why do I feel bad about this? I know what I'm talking about, and I'm smarter than these people, and I'm better than these people. How do I show that?
Well, I think that, for one, I kind of had to do that as a young female because of the job that I was in. So you kind of have to kind of puff your chest up a little bit, whether you want to or not. But I think practice, honestly, talking to people, whether it's in policing or whether it's in the gym, or in a large group or on Zoom right now, practicing is what makes you better at no matter what skill you're trying to get better at, right? So same with you guys here doing the podcast. As you practice, as you talk, if you're trying to get better at exuding confidence, you have to practice it. So whether that's someone, if you're a shy person and you work in a job and you would really like to see some changes happen for the better in your, let's say you work in an insurance company. I don't know, just talking to your coworkers a little bit more, running things by them, and then instead of just jumping right up to the top dog. But maybe just practice speaking out more and really really using your words or using your kind of allies to help you get there too. So practice with people that you trust that will give you honest feedback as well.
Good. Take that leap. Put your hand up in class.
I mean, not at the end of the day.
That's one thing.
You don't want to be that guy.
So I don't know why this popped into my head, but there was a time I was in a class in university, and it was a statistics class, and I was good in the class, but not unbelievable. And there was this one class, and the teacher asked a question, and it's basically does anyone know the answer to this? And the whole class is just silent, doesn't want to talk. Mind you, 95% of the class did this last week, and they know the answer. And then he's like, all right, I'll give 10%, 20 marks, 40 marks on the next test if somebody answers. So I put my hand up, go to the board. I don't even think I wrote it properly, but
Probably not, because I've seen your handwriting.
So just because I went up there though and showed that kind of like, I'll stand in front of the class and do this, I was rewarded for it by getting, given marks on my next assignment, right? Where it's like, where you talk about, even if you don't always have the answer behind you, showing that confidence and just putting yourself out there, putting your hand up to answer that question, now you're rewarded for it. And now people are like, now that might inspire other people. Like I guarantee you 80% of that class was like, shit, I should have just said something, right?
Right.
So, no, that's great.
Yeah, no, I think it comes down to like being in control of that situation too, right? So like people that knew the answer but just chose not to because they just didn't feel like it. Okay, but because you were like, oh, wait a minute, I may get something out of this. Maybe the teacher will like give you something better on your test, like you said. Notice you. If you're someone that wants to get noticed for maybe your ideas, you have to do that because otherwise, how are you going to get that across?
So let's talk now. You worked your time in patrol 4 or 5 years, then you move into the drug squad. We don't want to talk about all that drug squad stuff. Maybe another episode. That's a whole episode on its own. But you scramble through that, and that is a scramble because it is the busiest job around. And then you meet a SWAT guy, and you fall in love, and next thing you know, you're having a baby. Now let's talk about how. Fast forward.
That's how it works, people. That's how it works.
That is almost how it worked. But so we get married, we have kids, and you know what? I saw it happen to all kinds of female officers where you're like, oh man, like she used to like love this job, and now you see there's female officers wanting to get desk jobs and day jobs, and I never understood it until all of a sudden I'm married to a female officer, and I totally start to get it, but only from an outside getting it, not from the inside getting it. And I think any woman listening here today has probably felt that same way if you've had a child, or maybe you should be bracing yourself for preparing that once you have a child. It probably gets heightened in the world of policing because of the violence and the danger and the shift work. But what happened? What was that change that happened in your career that, what happened from being a no kids to kids as a police officer?
Well, when I first started, before kids, I didn't know if I wanted kids or not. I loved the job. I thought it was fun. It was fast paced. Then when my brother had his first, he had a boy, and pretty much as soon as my brother had his first, I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to have kids, because it shows you a different type of love, an unconditional kind of like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I spent a lot of time with his son, and that just kind of solidified it. And then I think going from not having kids as a police officer to then realizing what that means as a person who, that person is a little bit more dependent on you. So even though it was only my nephew, I'm still his aunt, and we're still a close family. So that kind of changed things. And then having my own children changed drastically. You realize how much people are 100% reliant on you. And also the things that you used to think mattered don't matter anymore, or at least have a much lessened value to them. So in the sense of going in and day out, whether, let's say, on patrol, and going into situations where you don't know what's going to happen, but you have kids at home, 1, 2, 3 kids at home, waiting for you to come home. That's a heavy burden to bear. And knowing that you want to be there to raise them and see them grow, and how much happiness they bring to your life versus your job, essentially, there's no comparison.
Which is crazy, yeah, because that can take the hesitation kind of into the job.
Absolutely,
a bit, right?
Totally. It would make my job, like, now even thinking about like things that I've seen or calls that I've been to. If I were to go to them now, I feel like I would have probably made a lot of different choices, or thought different things, or felt different things. Because when you're a single young female, like, that, you're just, living life, working, making money. But I feel like it's less emotional for sure in my case. But then having kids and seeing maybe something that sparks a thought or a feeling in you that could be me or, something along those lines, definitely makes a huge difference in how I think about certain scenarios anyways.
Right. And I've kind of always had this question, but never asked you guys, I guess. So for Tony, even like, how did this play into your mindset or change the way you looked at the job sometime? Because I know, like, for me, like, we'd be in situations, you're in a helicopter in a lightning storm, and it's like sketchy, but it's kind of cool and all this stuff. But, you're thinking about yourself, and that's all there is to it. And I know you've had more than a few experiences where, you're in pretty high, I guess, stress and high danger situations. Like when Dani was pregnant and Dani was having Colton and Braun, like, how did that change your perspective on the job?
So for me, viewing her as a police officer, it definitely changed. It was like, it went from, viewing her as a police officer to viewing her as somebody I loved to viewing her as the mother of my children. And it definitely had different stages in the, I absolutely hated when she'd be working midnights and I would be at home. Because we didn't, like, our shifts crossed over. That's one of the reasons why we made the change. But our shifts crossed over quite a bit. But they also didn't a lot. So she'd be at work in the midnights. I couldn't sleep, just knowing. And a lot of times, too, like, she'd be working and I'd get the phone call. Like, hey, there's a gun call going on. And now I'm like, there's a gun call going on. Is Dani there? Where is she? Why is she not answering her phone? Like, and like that would like freak me out. But I'll tell you a real funny story. So,
it was somewhat embarrassing sometimes.
So, yeah, somewhat embarrassing sometimes. So
Tony's here again. and
so
another parking ticket and Tony shows up.
All the women listening, right? You can probably appreciate this. A lot of women, because of complications, because of the frequency of losing children, don't really announce that they're pregnant to 3 months, right? So we kind of like followed that same suit. However, they're out there doing this job that's like got so much violence involved in it. So we really didn't want to let people in on our news. I think it was our second child, Braun, and she's out there on the road and she's pregnant, and I know she's pregnant, but to the point where she's not telling her bosses because she doesn't want,
Only my partner knew, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's day shift, so she's not working with her partner. I'm on days as well, but one of the things in policing is like, you don't want to be that guy that's like, every call your wife goes to, you're like, hey, we got to go to this call, right? But I also know she's pregnant, so now like I actually do want to go to the call a little bit more. She's supposed to work in South Windsor where it's relatively safe and not much going on. She does shoplifters and frauds all day and car accidents. Well, I hear her take this call. They dispatch her to a call downtown. And I'm sitting at the police station in our room in the basement, and I'm working with this guy, Corey Hallis. He's like this 7-foot tall guy that played on Team Canada, a massive guy, but an awesome dude. And he doesn't know. I hadn't told any of the guys yet. And so I'm working with him, and we hear her go to the call, and I'm like pissed off. I'm like, why did they send her to that call? And he's like looking at me like that's totally not like me to like even get mad with dispatch or anything. And then I hear they're sending like kind of another goofy officer that I'm not a fan of, who I can't fight his way over a paper bag. But that's off topic. So she shows up at this church around the corner, All Saints. It's right at Goyo and Park. And I hear her go in, and then the first thing I hear is them screaming for backup. So I'm already my partner, and I'm like, I don't feel good about this call. Let's start getting the truck. He's like, yeah, all right, man. Like, so we start to drive out, and then I hear them scream for help. I'm like, we gotta go. And he's like, will you relax? Like, he's like, you're white. Because that's like, I've been in all kinds of crazy situations, and this is like really kind of low key. It's a mental health thing, and at the church. And I'm like, Dani's pregnant. We gotta fucking go. He hits it. He drives over the curb, and we drive through a park, like almost right up onto the steps of this church, go charging in. The guy is like out of control. There's like a crazy fight, and I end up actually tasering the guy in front of the altar, in front of a whole packed church of people. And I'm telling you, we weren't even like, the taser wasn't even done cycling, and I'm like, that's it, you gotta come off the road, tell your boss this is done. And anyway, so probably goes.
It was so embarrassing.
So it did affect you a little bit.
Yeah, it did affect my decision making.
To answer the question, it did have an impact.
The person, he didn't get tasered because of that. However, it did affect it, and it affected her probably in a negative way because she was so mad at me that night when we came home.
I think that's a pretty valid reaction though, right? Like, this is also a very heightened scenario, both of you being in, the police force in a situation like that. But yeah, I could only imagine
My
the
partner's face, man. If you could
mindset.
just see him look at me, like, he's also 7 feet tall behind this like truck, like trying to drive it. And he's like, what the fuck? What the? And he's just so mad. He was so mad at me for not telling him. He's so mad at her because, we really loved each other. And
But he also knows because he has kids
Yeah,
and he's a
so
big family man
Definitely,
too.
it definitely plays a part. So let's move on a little bit. So let's talk about, you recognize the need for a change. You're having, doubts about going into work and missing time with the kids. And we knew that our kids were going to have to sleep out 90 days a year. What's going through your head? You were the one who kind of brought this, like, maybe we should do something about this. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a kid, you essentially decide that you are going to take care of that kid. So I
Hopefully.
did not. Right, you should anyway.
Should. Not everybody we worked,
No.
that we dealt with, but yes.
We'll continue.
Let's move on.
So in my mind, that was not an acceptable future of having the kids sleep out. My mom, your mom, my dad, like, they've already had their kids. So for us to be like, well, for my career, but you're going to need to watch the kids. And they would have. But that wasn't the future that I envisioned for our family. So that became a very, not that it wasn't difficult, but I think it kind of unclouded a lot of the decisions that we made beyond that. It was a lot easier to make a lot of other decisions based off of just your vision for the future of your family.
Yeah, so I'm working with ETS currently, and I'm working with another little small coaching group. And one of the things we're talking about there is mission statements and core values. And I think, like, if we could, as a couple, give you and Brooke some advice, or any other young people that are about to have some families or have a family, is that you need to, like, sit down and actually, like, do a mission. Like, what's the mission of your family, and what are your core values, and what's acceptable and not acceptable? And Danny and I had that real big, long, drawn-out conversation about that, and money wasn't the priority. They gave us a schedule. They said, you know what, you guys, Danny and I were going to have 2 days off in common out of every 35 days.
But we tried to work it so that we could work in different scenarios where that wouldn't happen, and it just logistically through the police service wasn't feasible. They weren't allowing that. So it was what it was. So, like, although we did look at our schedules in patrol and noticed that we would have had 2 days off in common every 35 days, that wasn't acceptable. Okay, what can we do? It's not like we were like, well, fuck it, I'm quitting. No, it was like, okay, what other options do I have? Because you have tons of families and people married to each other in the police service. What are our options? And there weren't any.
Yeah. So one of the options might have been to take a day shift job behind a desk, but to be honest, both of us, that was not what we signed up to do. And that wasn't going to fuel that passion. By this point, the garage gym was doing okay. And so, I was doing my best not to be a overwhelming husband and be like, hey, you're the mom, do this. But you kind of, like, selflessly, as I always say on the short time we run this podcast, but selflessly, you were like, you know what, I'm going to put in for a leave of absence, extending my leave of absence beyond our second child. She got it, put in again, and you get the note back that says no. And that one, I was like, my opinion as the husband and as another coworker was like, you worked so hard to get that job. People, we work with people every day that are in this gym that are just dying for that job. And I don't want you to give that up because I don't want you to regret that, later on in our lives. And, what was your thought there? How, you decided, you just sent an email basically in 2 minutes and said, you know what, I resign.
I wrote a very well thought out resignation letter. Thank you very much.
I feel like you had it planned, but yeah.
Yeah, it was in the works a long time ago. No, because to me, being a mom, and men don't understand what it's like to be a mother because they don't, and not by any fault of their own. And thank God women are the ones who carry the children. But you don't know what it feels like to have birthed your children and, like, they have lived inside of you. And, like, so it's a little bit more than just like, oh, there's a baby here. Like, you are the one who made sure that you were being healthy the entire time you were pregnant for almost a whole year. You were the one who went through that the birth of that child. So being close to those children it's hard to explain in that way. So coupling that with the vision of what the family would look like, the job did not even come close to amounting to that other part of my life. So I know in policing, it's very hard to get that away from being like your persona and like who you are as a person. Like, hi, I'm Dani and I'm a police officer is usually something that comes hand in hand. It's just, that's the way it is, the nature of the job. But to me, I identified very strongly with being a mother more so at that stage of my life. So it wasn't as.
Yeah, I think I would like to touch on something that goes a little bit further, because I think you said something really important there. And I think that's where a lot of couples kind of go wrong. And I feel it, I think it's a Ben Franklin's quote. A lot of men, you turn 25 and then all of a sudden you're 70 or it's something to that effect. And I think what you said there, and I think, I know you're reading the Jordan Peterson book and things like that, but I think we really have to recognize that men and women are not the same. Doesn't mean we're not equal. It means that we're not the same. And I think that one of the reasons we've done well here and one of the reasons we do pretty good at home is because you're okay with that. You're right. I don't understand what it's like to be a mom, but you don't also make me be a mom. You're not making me be sitting there every single night, nurturing and doing things. You appreciate that I am going to do some boy things with my boys, and that there's other things I need to do. And we talked about this off camera with Bobby Tran last week about how Ashley just really supports him and puts fuel in the fire. And I think that's why, I always feel there's days I feel guilty leaving to go to work because we've been at work a lot. But most of the time I feel
that's empowered
to do that. So talk about that, maybe a little bit of advice on how, some wives can maybe let go or in that regard, but also strengthen it in other places. And how that maybe has worked for us or for you, if it has.
No, for sure. There's man and wife and father and mother have different roles. It is what it is. And some of those roles get kind of mixed up. It's not like it's super strict with the man role and the woman role in the household. I think that the way that you can navigate that with your partner is important, so that it's not a fight all the time about who should be doing what and why. And I think that going towards your strengths is important as well. So just making sure that you realize that, looking at, instead of what does my partner not do in this situation, more so is what is my partner good at, and what role can they then play in the household with children or in their job. And then that way the roles are kind of a little bit more clearly defined. Because then you're not just pissed at what they're not doing, you're excited about what they are doing. So our kids know, when you come home, it's a free for all. You guys are fighting, you're playing football, it's very physical. Whereas I don't like that. I'm not that. I like playing sports with them, but that's your job. That's you. You're the man. You do that in our household. Whereas for me, I'm the one who's making the meals for them 5 million times a day and consoling them when they're crying. It's just certain things that we just do better, I think, individually, but come together as a partnership, if that makes sense. So I think, just looking to the positive of what your spouse brings to the table and what you bring to the table, and then making a happy medium there.
Yeah, I think playing to your strengths. And I think that's something we try to cover a lot, especially on the business side of things, is
yes.
You run a business with 6 people, 6 people within our main core, and it's everybody has their strengths, right? So Nikki has her strengths with all the email, MailChimp stuff that everyone else has no idea about, right? And it's I have our online stuff. You have the overall foreseeing CEO. Dani is the COO and again covers all the, almost the motherly duties of our job, and Steph being accountant, the books, running all that stuff, and then Johnny and Riley being a part of, all the miscellaneous stuff. And that is like, you have your role, and instead of trying to step over that role in order to just do more to like, not so please the other, but like, if I try to do Steph's bookkeeping right now, we'll go bankrupt, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
But if you work together as that group, it all comes in together and it's a success. So same thing at home. I'm obviously gathering from this is play to your strengths and, pull against each other, not against each other, but work with each other and find out, like you guys talked about with that mission, if that's what your mission was laying down kind of the, even if you literally lay it down on a chart, like these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, these are my strengths, my weaknesses. Let's interchange to find out what aspects of this we can do, and then that's how you'll make the most success.
And most of the time too, if you do recognize something that is a weakness through that, I feel like that almost makes that person work on their weakness on their own without you having to like freak out on them, right? Mm-hmm. So playing to each other's strengths and like that just makes you kind of want to be a better person anyways in those weaknesses as well. But same thing with the team, like when you played for the university or on the TAC team, when you're in a team, you have your role, and if you don't play to your strengths and everyone is just trying to like do things that they don't really know what to do or they don't like, then you're just going to be butting heads with each other and everyone is just going to lose their shit because like no one is getting anything done because you're not in the right role.
Too many. We were joking around with this the other day. It was like too many shovels in a hole. It's like if you're at a job site, if you're at a job
Tell
site,
me more.
you're at a job site and 6 people are trying to dig the same hole, it's not going to work, right? You need people around. One person's making the plan, one person's literally digging the hole, one person's helping clear the area, and then the next person's getting the next part set up, right? You're going to be a lot more productive than 6 of you running head to head trying to finish this one job.
Right, it's just so important to understand it's not like a percentage-based roles. Like, parenting at our house has never been a 50-50 role, or running the household 50-50 role. It's like whatever, like it is a 50-50 role because we're splitting it, but like because you've changed, and I'm a bad example because I like how I gag with shit, but Danny changed 75 diapers in the week, but I worked at that when we first had Colton, I was the team leader. I was working 600 hours of overtime a year. I mean, there was no like coming home and it's like, oh, okay, now you have to change the next 75 diapers because it's your turn to be 50%. It was like she recognized that role, that it was like, I am out there working, I'm working my ass off and it's not bullshit, but I also had to come home and recognize the role that like, what, I'm exhausted, but so is she, and I need to like do some things here. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like I would walk in the door and she would just hand me Colton full of a dirty diaper. Like, no, it's like, we can't measure it. It can't be measured, and we have to understand that here it can't be measured in like if you worked 32 hours and she worked 39 hours because we don't really track our hours here. We're all really ending towards that end product, which is success, whether it be in your family, in this business, in whatever, whoever's listening to this, in your household or in your business or whatever you do. Those same concepts apply over and over and over again in life.
Yeah, for sure. I think it has to do with respect and compassion for other people that are in your team or in your household, and just being a little more open-minded too.
And taking a step back and like taking a look at what that partner or what those other employees actually do, right? There's a lot of times you get so caught up, like tunnel vision, where it's like, I'm working so hard here, I'm doing all this, like could be I'm changing all the diapers, I'm making all the food and doing that. And it's like, well, they are out there working overtime shifts, right? You're upset because they're not at home, but they're providing money for the household. And on the other side, sitting in the cruiser, being upset because you're the one out there working overtime hours when they're taking this off your back, right? So being able to take a step back and look at that and say, if we are working together and positive about this, then it'll all come together. And obviously you guys have done a great job at being quite a happy family.
Model family.
Model family. We're far from the model family, but I think it all comes down to
we do our best.
Looking at what others are doing rather than what they're not doing. And that was a huge thing here on COVID. I know Casey and I, we had to actually have a real talk, you and I, because we had been here like a lot of hours, and it was like we were underappreciating what the people that weren't here were doing. And we had to like just like get our focus back on that. What are the good things that these, you know, the rest of our team is doing from home? Well, we're doing this because that's what's allowing this place to still operate, because that shit that needed to be done that we weren't doing anymore was getting done by them. So let's take a minute for a read-in. Dani, I'm sure if our first female guest, you got to make sure we have a bathroom break, she said, so something we never factored for. So
not because she's a female guest, just people have to pee.
Just did a couple shots.
She made it clear. Made it clear.
It's that lemonade Smirnoff.
Yeah, the lemonade Smirnoff's got her. So let's go. Axel, if you're listening, do your fancy stuff on the screen here. So Axel is a video production company that providing creative strategies and powerful video marketing campaigns for brands. They provide creative video services for small and large companies alike. Having worked with such brands as the Big Badass Garage Gym and the lowly Toronto Raptors, or vice versa, if you're a motivated business owner though, honestly, I seriously suggest that you reach out to them. They have experience, they got know-how, they've got we talk about team, they've got a team, a very diverse team that has different specialties. And with them, they'll focus on your goals and use their creative storytelling to introduce your brand to the world. That's what they've done for us. Axel has been with us since day one. They help us with our charities. They're currently working on another charity that they're super excited about, and this one we're gonna be backing them up on. So Axel's an all-in-one video production service. They're offering everything in-house, from strategy concepts and writing to producing, capturing, and editing your final stories. So go to axel.com, axelfilms.com, and tell them that Tony sent you.
Good. So Dani, you have obviously become, I think, a main ambassador for women in general, right? Your classes through here are your boss classes, which is focused for female clients working to, you know, work on their core, work on their lower half, and doing stuff like that. But I think overall, just like through you, if you were to grace through your Instagram account, you just present like that thing we talked about earlier with confidence and that empowerment as being a female in kind of the workforce, and, you know, being a female through the police force. Like you've always presented that, again, confidence, and just like, I will say, early on in my career here, that intimidation in the way of just like not somebody to mess with. And so let's just talk about how, like, obviously your past creates a lot of that confidence, but what do you do now? Like, now that you've moved kind of further past the police force, you've now become like a very, very, I'd say, amazing mother to the two boys.
Thanks.
But you still project that same confidence and strength and just like proudness with everything you do. So where does that lead to? What does that do now?
Well, with my boys, whether I had girls or boys, I think that in raising children, starting them early in whether it's confidence or nutrition or exercise, you have to get them early, or else it's going to be kind of very hard to implement certain values into their lifestyles. So I think that's important to me regardless, gym aside or work aside. And in the gym, I think that it's very important because I have a lot of mothers who have children, and I can tell that they want to be more confident, and I can tell that, or they'll tell me flat out that they want that they feel like they can't be confident, or they aren't sure what to do in certain situations, and they want to be stronger, but they just don't. They've never been that way. So knowing that they have children and that they could be a positive influence on their children in the same way, that's what I want to instill in them. So whether it's my children or whether it's people in the gym or just anyone in general, that when we go to schools and teach classes, whether they're females or males, having confidence will get you opportunities later on in life, or will just make your life better all around. So I think that that's why I really feel passionate about having people feel that within themselves, so that they can express that through their families and their friends, and so they don't feel that awkwardness, I guess.
Awesome. So I think with that too, like one of your specialties throughout the gym definitely is your fuel program, right? Your fuel programs, your nutrition background, and providing our clients with the proper meal plan and your one-on-ones with them and going over every aspect of your life. Like I know fuel goes beyond the nutrition plan itself. You do talk about kind of basically changing your life, not just changing your meal plan. So let's talk about that in the way of like, again, you can go online and find a meal plan, what works for you based on your body type. But fuel, which you do, and I think why you have so much success and why it shows you've helped people lose as a total over 2,000 pounds. Like, what separates that from Googling how to eat properly? Like,
well, because nutrition is just one part of the puzzle, and it's not the most important, but it's not the least important. And I think that in order to get the best out of someone or to understand what they're doing, what's working for them, what's not working for them, and then how to shape that towards what they want to accomplish, whether that be lose 10 pounds or be healthier or a total lifestyle change. Like, there's so many different aspects to what certain people like and want to do in their life. And that's why you have to look at the big picture. You can't just say like, oh, Casey, and you tell me like, hey, can you give me some macros? Yeah, I can. Sure, no problem. Take me 2 seconds. But how much are you sleeping at night? How much stress do you have? What are your meals look like right now? What do you like? What do you not like? There's so many moving parts to that it's giving someone, it's like a disservice if you're not paying attention to the other parts of their life, because food is only one of them. And I think that's why people have success, is because it's not only nutrition coaching. I don't like saying life coach, but at the same time, I think it's more like a lifestyle coach. Like, what are you doing? What works for you and what doesn't? And let's make it so much better. And it's not a quick fix. So let's make your life better.
Yeah, I think that's what the garage gym is. I don't think it's just strength training, conditioning, cardio, nutrition. I think it is more of life coaching. It's taking all those pillars and placing them and making sure your stress, your sleep, your self-confidence, all these things are at its highest. So I think like talking to all women that are listening, and like men, like, don't turn this off, because like one of the reasons that we've succeeded together and at the garage gym with all these members is because so many couples are bought into this together. And even the ones where just the wife comes, we see the men are at the Christmas parties and they're huge supporters of this. And I think like, so if your wife is there and she's had 2 kids and she's getting into her mid-30s and maybe not feeling so great about how she looks in a bathing suit and things like that, you need to understand this. Like, and I think a lot of people, Dani, they kind of underestimate how far you've come in a short period of time, because not that you were ever like, you were fit, you were health conscious, but I mean, when I met you, you were eating like Vector for dinner and, not strength training. You were doing like, some low impact cardio all the time. And then, it was only 10 years ago probably when you did your first deadlift, like real deadlift. And like to see that, and you weren't looking to be a coach or a trainer. You just started deadlifting because I was deadlifting and it was like something to do and you started liking it. Like so to see how far you've come in terms of like your confidence in strength training and nutrition, like women listening right now, like just because you're 30 or you're 25 or whatever and you've never lifted doesn't mean you can't start. Right? So let's talk about that. Like, how did you make that transformation? What would you recommend to somebody, to go from, doing what I call the milk bag cardio, walking on a treadmill and calling that your exercise routine, to, deadlifting, squatting, bench pressing?
Well, I think that my lifestyle is totally different than it used to be. Okay. So yes, right. I was 21. I bought my own house. I lived by myself. Like, I didn't need a lot to survive there. Like some quesadillas you throw in the oven and maybe some Vector. Like, I used to smoke. People don't know that. So like my lifestyle is very different now. And honestly, going from that to deciding that you want to be healthier, and once you get a taste of weights, especially all women know this, is once you start to lift heavy, you're like, wow, this feels fantastic. And I don't have to do all that repetitive cardio that's like really just a hamster on a wheel. Not really, like, yes, it's doing good for your cardiovascular system, but I want more. Like, I want something else that makes me feel good, because like walking on a treadmill, watching a TV is not that fun. So just getting like a little taste here and there, and then actually noticing when you do decide to not eat Vector for your meals every day, feeling how good normal, like real whole foods taste and how it changes your body makes a difference too. And then plus, like, you know, being on shift work and having stress, and like even stress that you maybe don't necessarily feel all the time. So like it's little parts that just kind of like as they get better, you notice, and you're like, I'm gonna do more of that. I'm gonna lift more weights, or I'm gonna eat healthier now, starting now, you know, that kind of thing. Quitting smoking, like those kinds of things are like, once you get those habits and you start to like take a step and then another step, then you realize kind of like what you want to feel like.
That is a giant point. Like a lot of people, I find I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to change my meal. I'm going to start deadlifting. I'm going to start running 6 miles a day. I'm going to start doing all these things. And they do it a day and realize their body's exhausted and done, and there's nothing to do from it. I think what you're really trying to get across with your point is it's a long-term game, right? And changing a few things in your diet week 1, and then adding a bit more week 2, and then starting to exercise a little bit, and then more and more, and adding on to it, and all of a sudden you're 10 years down the road and you're healthier than you've ever been at, you know, your mid-30s.
Careful.
That's funny. See me searching up there. But that's what a lot of people get so like caught up in, like, I need to change this tomorrow and make a difference by Friday. When it's like, no, it's going to take more than, you know, getting rid of Vector cereal at night to change your lifestyle. It's a few things at a time, and then it's not overwhelming. You know, if you start trying to run a half marathon in 2 days, you're not going to do it. You might, but it's a lot of work. If you start chipping away, you know, 500 yards, added that every single day, all of a sudden you are doing that with ease, right? So it's those little steps at a time that are pushing people into that habits you have. Like you see all those Instagram models and wonder it's genetics and all this stuff. It's like, no, it's years and years and years, and proper dieting and proper working out and proper, like you talk about, proper sleep, proper stress, like taking care of that stress and anxiety. All those things factor into that one ripped photo they have on their page, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot more to it than just changing that mindset day one.
No, for sure. Even in nutrition, I was talking today in our Zoom session about lowering your standards. So like everyone always has that lofty goal, and that's a good goal to have, but you have to look at it long term. I think that, what do you say? Never stop disappointing, kind of along those lines. But like that low.
My advice to all the husbands: never stop disappointing. So then when you do something right, they're super happy about it. It's
true.
Worked for me.
It's true.
It's worked for me.
So lower your expectations. Like it is, if you give yourself daily goals, and you are winning at those goals, you are so much more confident and motivated than if you try to do, like you were talking about, 6 different complete lifestyle changes on Monday, like we all say, and you crash and burn. Who wants to get up after that? Nobody. So lower your expectations, daily wins, and then as we climb the ladder, then we will see kind of how far does that look towards my lofty goal, lifestyle goal.
So make it clear for everybody listening, lofty goals, you know what, have them, you know what, but make sure that you understand the steps in between, and that the best day to take action is actually today, right? Danny, you could have used all kinds, like it wasn't, I mean, you went from skinny, you were skinny, and you're the story that the person that put on 15 pounds and looked better, like in my opinion, and I was super attracted to you before, so that says a lot. But like, I think it's important that people understand that when you really got into fitness, it was like you like just before we had the baby or just after you, like it was like not the ideal time where you would think that you would like start to pursue your Jim Jones certification, one of the hardest certifications in the whole world. Like, I feel like you did that, like, 3 to 4 months postpartum is when you started chasing after that.
Yeah, I was for sure doing Jim Jones. I was either just previously pregnant. So yes, I was not in ideal form for any of those certifications. And I must say that when I did start lifting with you, I did gain a lot of weight. That being said, because I changed the way that I trained, and gaining weight, not necessarily in a bad way, but like started putting on more muscle and started to be, rather than just kind of lean and skinny, as to like being stronger. And it was good for my job. And it was good to prepare my body to be healthier for pregnancies. And then doing those certifications throughout that whole thing. So I definitely would say that during that Jim Jones certification, I was like all over the place when it came to like what my body was doing or had been doing. But I think that it's all been for the better, for sure. And the difference between my weight, let's say, when you and I first met versus now is for sure a 20-pound increase.
So you're saying if a female lifts weights and barbells, they're not going to get super, super bulky like a bodybuilder?
No. So that's a big
let's crush that myth right now. We should have started with that one because that's what you guys have all been listening for.
No, I honestly like that's so frustrating because one, it totally diminishes the work that people put into that actually want to look bulky. Let's say those women that are very muscular. Bodybuilders take specific supplements. They take they don't really do it in necessarily the best nutritional way possible. But they work hours and hours and hours in the gym to become as muscular as they are and lean as they are, and they put their bodies through a ton. So it's not really fair for people to say that. And also, lifting weights is going to be the key to your longevity, for your muscle mass, to make sure that you are strong for things like COVID if that hits your family. So those things are so important, and to think that people are still in that mindset of, well, I don't want to lift weights because I feel like I'm just going to like blow up, is just so outdated.
Nice. So if you're sitting at home, like, there's always going to be an excuse. There's always going to be an excuse. I just had a baby. I want to have a baby. I just got a new job. I just got laid off from a job. There's always going to be a reason why not to start. Start, because if Dani can get the Jim Jones certification, between babies, I'm sure that you can cut that 5 pounds, or you can cut those few inches, or you can get, that into the gym and do something you haven't done before. Like, if there's so many coaches in this city of Windsor. If you walk in as a woman and you've never lifted weights, or as a man, but like we're talking about women today, and you walk in and you've never lifted weights, you've never been on a barbell, we coaches, we actually love that, because you don't have the bad techniques, you don't have the bad, the things that we're gonna have to train out of you. We just get to train like a mold you into something, and you're gonna see such gains so fast. We've seen that so many times. Women come in here and within like a year they've doubled their deadlift.
Don't you love how they shriek? They're like,
Yeah.
I can't believe I just did that.
They're more jacked than a guy.
When
they go through and they lift 300 pounds, they deadlift 300 pounds.
And the men are like,
and you're just like,
I gotta up my game.
Yeah, no, that is probably the most joyful part of coaching. And like, and all the meat sticks who walk in and out of here, you see them, they'll lift 500 pounds, and you're like, sweet.
Yeah.
Like, hey, good job.
I thought we'd have all
should have
these
lifted
warriors
550. But when you see that 120 pound chick deadlift 300 pounds,
Yeah.
and just like, and then jump up and giggle at the end of it, you're like, this is unbelievable. It's awesome.
Casey's describing you. But yeah, it is one. I cannot believe what that's done for me as just a person, thinking like we'd be in here just training these savages and like the Jim Jones, and like to see just like a mom come in here and fucking crush a PR on a deadlift, where she stands up, takes her 10 seconds to stand up, and then giggle away and cry and hug everybody and go home so proud. Like that is what this place has just become, and it's got a lot of dudes in here too, but the women in there run this place, and my wife is the boss and kind of handles that part of this whole thing, as she runs everything, oversees everything to do with women's training in this gym. So let's wrap that up right there. So Danny, somebody wants to reach out to you for fuel. This is something we do outside of the garage gym as well. It's not just the garage gym thing. We do take, and Danny, not me, I don't do anything with it. Danny takes all these nutrition clients. So somebody wants to reach out to you to get involved in your fuel program. What do they do?
Yeah, they can just email me, danny@thegaragegym.net, or go on my Instagram. So I'm at the Mrs. Smith, like written out in words. Or you can just get in touch with someone that you know. Most of the time it's through referrals. So if you know someone that comes to the gym, feel free to ask them to relay the message.
Yeah, so I'm sure this won't be the last time you're on the podcast, but we got to get a babysitter to get you here, so we'll see. But yeah, it won't be the last time, and yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing everything that you do for our family and for this gym.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Please get closer to the mic.
And that's a wrap. Cheers. We always end it with a cheers.